So this was the video I was gonna do yesterday. However, I figured that the video that I actually did yesterday was more important to get out first. It'll help some things make sense, especially, you know, like the undeservedness of hell in general for a lot of the sins. Um, it's an infinite punishment for a finite crime. If that makes sense. It's unfair, is what it is. It's unjust, I guess is a better word, considering that they use the phrase "God is just" a lot in the Bible. That's just wrong in pretty much every context. No matter how great your sin is, it shouldn't be eternal. However, I will say that that I believe it's the main Jewish belief of hell, or Gethsemane. And well, Gethsemane was like a place, like an actual physical place that was used as an analog. That's not important right now. The Jewish belief of hell, not to my knowledge, at least the Jewish sects that I have studied and whatever, it's not an eternal punishment. It's actually basically just disappearing. So if you want to be with God, if you love God, you go to heaven and be with God for eternity. If you don't want to be with God, you disappear. Your soul is returned to heaven, and your body and memories are gone into the abyss, right? Like normal death, except with the soul element. Spirit, I don't remember terminology. Pedantic, all that. um, However, especially the evangelical view of hell is eternal punishment, eternal fire. There are a lot of different views, near-death experiences and all that. There are people who have described it as individual torture cubes for people. As an example, one girl thought she was in heaven, and then the trees came to life and strangled her and whatever to death. Except she couldn't die because she was in hell. There's a horror short film about hell. I forget what it's called exactly, but this girl burns alive. She's all burnt to a crisp, then she regenerates entirely. Maggots start eating her. All this gross stuff. And so one thing I didn't consider from being, or when I first turned Christian, until I was probably in my teens, hell would be terrifying. Like, it's not just that it would be painful and bad; it would be scary. Like pain is scary. Pain is something we naturally avoid, but you don't consider the fact that hell would probably be terrifying because it's dark. It's described as dark, and in the Jewish belief, that's used to support the fact that it would be nothingness, the abyss, if you will. Well, for evangelicals, they describe it as a dark burning fire, a lake of fire. And I don't know. I haven't specifically researched this. It's not necessarily important to the point that I'm going to try to make. I just think it's important to point out what hell is in my eyes. For me, it was eternal torture in a lake of fire, with that is dark and scary and painful and constant pain and torture and screaming and horror. And that's it's a terrifying thought, especially to be there for eternity, because you looked at some girl's butt and thought, dang, it's kind of cute. You know what I mean? It just seems a bit too much. But as an ex-Christian, anti-theist, agnostic, a lot of describers for a lot of different things. I'll have to clear that up eventually. As an atheist, we'll simplify it. That's the word I'm looking for. We'll say I'm an atheist. I am terrified of hell. Not in the way that a kid is afraid of the boogeyman under his bed, but in the way that you might be scared of, I don't know, I can't think of a horror movie, because, like for instance, if you ever watch a horror movie at night, you're going to be a little bit more freaked out when going to bed, right? Not because you thought the horror movie was real, but because of the concept of the horror movie. So you're going to turn your lights on, or you're going to, wait and calm down before you go to bed. Get it off your mind. But for hell, the turning your lights on is believing in and praising God and asking for forgiveness. And you can't really do that when you don't believe in God. It's not a choice that you make to believe in God, especially when you have so much evidence to the contrary, right? Sorry if there are weird clicking noises on the microphone. I'm holding it again. I don't have my boom arm yet. I should be getting that later this week. It's a terrifying thought, and I don't think I can be faulted for being scared of something like that in that way. But what gets really gross is they use this, and I'm not saying it's malicious. I really don't think most Christians use this maliciously. Or even on purpose. I don't think they intentionally try to scare people into... Well, some do. Some say homosexuals will burn in hellfire forever. You know, you see those street preacher signs online all the time. I actually knew a guy who did that. There was one video that went semi-viral of this guy going to punch a street preacher in the face, and another street preacher reached over and stopped his fist before it hit the other guy's face. I knew that guy. He was pretty cool. He wasn't. Well, okay. He was a fine person, but he had some messed up beliefs. We'll go with that. But so do most Christians, so I can't really blame him. Anyway, it's just the fact that they drill that into you, and whether or not it's intentionally there to scare you into being Christian, it's kind of beside the point. The fact that it's there at all is gross, and the fact that, you know, it was drilled into me so much as a Christian that now, what's it been? How old am I? I'm 18. Over a decade, about a decade of that thought, that belief being drilled into me from a young age. 7 years old. Younger for people who are Christians their whole life. My parents weren't even Christian when I was born. It took them. Actually, I think my dad was in prison when I was born, so that's cool. And my mom, actually I have my mom's last name because she didn't think they'd end up back together. They did. And when I was 7, they started going to church, and I think I mentioned this in my other video, in my Losing Faith video. I went to a summer camp when I was in 4th grade, 9 years old, I think. And, or it was the summer before 4th grade, so yeah, I was 9 years old. I'd either just turned 9 or was about to turn 9. I said the prayer and gave my life to Jesus or whatever. See how that turned out now. But the fact that, just a decade, and it has drilled this belief into me so much that it's genuinely terrifying to me, even outside of, the faith at all. That might make it even harder for people who have been in the religion 2-3 decades, even 15 years, especially if it's from a young age, when that's the first thing you get taught when you're young, the fact that if you stray away from God you'll burn in hellfire. It's gross, frankly, but they have to teach that because that's what they believe. And that's kind of part of the reason... Sorry, weird microphone noises. It's part of the reason I speak out against it so fervently, because I don't think these beliefs should be taught, because they're bad beliefs. And I grew up in it, and I turned out fine. But there are certain problems I have that I specifically attribute to Christianity, both directly and indirectly. This is one that I obviously have to attribute directly, because it was caused directly by Christianity. Just the constant thought of hell. And when I'm not thinking about it, obviously I don't care. But when I do think about it, it's terrifying in a way that other horror isn't, because it's an existential dread that I genuinely thought was real at one point. Even heaven I was scared of at one point, because it's eternity, right? Eternity is terrifying. Eventually that's going to get boring. Eventually you're going to get sad and depressed, because it's just forever the same things over and over, because there's only so much you can do, right? There's only so much to experience, even in all of eternity. Eventually it's going to grow old. And I was comforted by, I think I talked to my mom about it. I was sitting on my bed crying, and my mom came in and asked me what was wrong. And I said, actually, I think I went to my mom. I was like, hey, I'm kind of freaking out. Eternity seems kind of scary. And she's like, well, in heaven, you can't feel negative emotions. But in hell, that's a bad time. I actually don't think she brought up hell, but it was heavily implied, not through that conversation explicitly, but through years and years of being taught about hell and how it exists definitely and all that. Sure as hell, that expression. Um, it's long story short, hell, gross belief. Definitely not real, but it still scares me. In fact, I think I would probably, if there wasn't, if there was only one religion and that one religion happened to be Christianity, I would probably subscribe to Pascal's wager. If you don't know, Pascal's wager is a horrible philosophical argument for belief in God. It goes, if you believe in, or if you don't believe in God and he is real, you've wasted eternity. You are spending eternity in hell. However, if you do believe in God and he's not real, you've only wasted your lifetime. And obviously that's a broken argument because, first of all, there could be many, many different gods. It proposes a false dichotomy. Either Christian God is real or Christian God isn't real, which is technically true, but the wager relies on those being the only two possibilities, when in reality there are many, many other possibilities, such as, the Islamic God being real, I can't think of any others, all the Hindu gods being real, right? So that wager doesn't really work when there are more than two possibilities. But again, if Christianity was the only religion, I would probably subscribe to that. Even though I think God is horrible, the Christian God is awful. Not a good guy. Really, really bad at the whole God thing. It's kind of hard to argue, burning in hellfire forever, regardless of whether or not you think he's okay. That's all I got. So thanks for watching this one. I love you all. I don't know how to end this.